On the day everything in my life collapsed, my husband Cain dragged me into court, accusing me of being an unfit wife and an unworthy mother. He demanded every property we owned and full custody of our child, determined to leave me with absolutely nothing. I thought the judge's gavel would be the sound that ended my world until another voice echoed through the courtroom. A small, trembling voice I knew better than my own. "Your Honor, can I show you something my mom doesn't know about yet?" It was my son, Liam, standing at the door in his school uniform, holding his cracked tablet against his chest. The judge paused, then nodded. Liam walked to the front, lifted the tablet with both hands, and tapped play. Within seconds, the courtroom fell into a stunned, breathless silence. Because what appeared on that screen exposed everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every trap that had been set against me. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, let us know in the comments which state or city you're watching from. And remember to like and subscribe so we can continue bringing you more powerful stories all like this one. That morning began like almost every morning of my life for the past 30 years, inside the old house on the outskirts of Sao Paulo, where the sunlight pushed through the dusty window and spilt across the kitchen I had been working in since before dawn. I moved quietly, like a shadow that knew its place, stirring the thick Brazilian coffee on the stove while the pão de queijo baked in the small oven beside me. At 65, I had long grown used to waking before everyone else, long grown used to keeping my footsteps soft, my voice softer, and my presence nearly invisible. I had learned, painfully, gradually, that silence kept the peace. I remember standing there, holding the wooden spoon in my hand, thinking about whether the dough had risen enough, when I heard the familiar thump of Cain's footsteps coming down the stairs. Instinctively, my body straightened, my breath slowed, my heart, even after all these years, tightened with a mixture of habit and dread. He entered the kitchen, looking perfect as always, shirt freshly ironed, hair neatly combed, face carved with that cold expression that used to confuse me, but now only exhausted me. He didn't look at me when he sat down. He didn't greet me. He didn't ask how I slept. I placed his coffee in front of him. I knew exactly how he liked it: strong, dark, hot. But the moment he took a sip, he clicked his tongue with irritation. "It's bitter," he said flatly, his eyes fixed on his phone. "You always make it bitter." A small piece of me withered, the same piece that had withered 1,000 times before. "I'm sorry," I whispered, barely audible. He didn't respond. I stood beside the table as if waiting for a command, waiting for anything that wasn't silence or disappointment. The air felt heavy, thick, suffocating. Sometimes I wondered if he could feel it too, or if only I lived inside this quiet prison. Then I heard the light tapping of small footsteps coming down the stairs, and everything inside me softened at once. Liam burst into the kitchen, wearing his little school uniform, his smile bright enough to cut through even the coldest morning. "Mom! Dad! Good morning!" He hugged me first. My sweet boy always hugged me first. And for a moment, My heart remembered what warmth felt like. Bom dia, meu amor, I whispered. He ran to Kane next, who finally put his phone down just long enough to force a smile. I'll take you to school today, Kane said. Liam cheered, thrilled in a way only a child could be, and I exhaled quietly, relieved that at least in front of our son, Kane pretended to be someone he once was. Breakfast ended quickly after that. Liam finished his food, grabbed his backpack, and Kane stood up without a single glance in my direction. No goodbye, no acknowledgement, just the sound of the front door closing and his car engine roaring to life. And then the silence fell over the house again, the kind of silence that eats your thoughts and leaves you alone with the things you pretend not to feel. I washed the dishes, wiped the counters, and swept the floor. I moved on autopilot like someone who had been doing this for decades, because I had. As I scrubbed the pan, I found myself wondering, as I often did, whether today would be the day Kane softened, the day he said something kind, the day he remembered I was the woman who had once been everything to him. But deep down, I knew better. The man I married had disappeared long ago, and yet I kept hoping, foolishly, quietly, pathetically. Around noon, I picked Liam up from school. This was the one piece of my day that still held joy. He told me about his art project, about how his friend spilt juice on his shirt, and about a silly joke his teacher told. I listened to every word like they were the most precious things in the world, because, to me, they were. Mom, today I answered the question right. The teacher gave me a gold star, he said, proudly holding my hand. Of course you did, I laughed softly. You're brilliant. When we got home, I knelt down to help him take off his shoes, and that was when I heard it. A motorcycle stopping outside the gate, followed by a loud shout. Delivery for Mrs. Helena! I frowned. I wasn't expecting anything. I rarely buy anything for myself. The courier handed me a large brown envelope. No sender name. Only the logo of a prestigious law firm was printed neatly in the corner. My heart stuttered. Mom, what is it? Liam asked. I forced a steady voice. Probably nothing important. Go wash up, querido. Lunch will be ready soon. When he disappeared down the hallway, I sat on the sofa, the envelope heavy in my hands, as though it already knew it was about to ruin my life. I tore it open with shaking fingers. Papers slid out. The first line hit me harder than any blow I had ever felt in my life. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Plaintiff, Kane. Defendant, Helena. My breath shattered, my vision blurred, but nothing prepared me for the next lines. Full custody of Liam. All assets transferred to Kane. Accusations of emotional instability. Claims that I had failed in my duties as a wife and a mother. My hands shook uncontrollably. The papers slipped to the floor. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, loud and painful. I whispered, Meu Deus, what is this? What did he do? And before I could gather myself, before I could breathe, I heard the front door open. Kane had come home early, and in that moment, on that quiet, sunlit afternoon, I felt my entire world begin to collapse around me. When I heard the door open behind me, I froze. My knees were still pressed into the carpet, the papers scattered around me like shards of glass. And for a moment, I wished I could gather them all up and pretend I hadn't seen a single word. But Cain stepped inside, loosened his tie as if nothing in the world was wrong, and the quiet click of the door closing felt like the final lock on a cage I didn't know I'd been living in. He glanced at the mess on the floor, those horrible legal documents with my name marked as defendant, and his face didn't change. No guilt, no hesitation, just cold emptiness staring back at me, like he had already detached himself from our entire life. I forced my voice out, though it trembled uncontrollably. Cain, what? What is this? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked past me, set his briefcase down, and unbuttoned his cuffs with slow, deliberate movements, as if savoring the moment. Then he finally looked down at me, still on the floor, holding the page that accused me of being an unfit mother, and said, without any emotion, exactly what it looks like. I don't want to be married to you anymore. The words punched the air out of my lungs. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. I pushed myself up to sit straighter, my palms slick with sweat, my voice barely a whisper. Full custody? Of Liam? You want to take our son away from me? His jaw tightened, and suddenly his eyes filled with an irritation I had seen so often it no longer shocked me. You're not capable, he snapped. You can barely manage yourself, much less a growing boy. I shook my head violently. That's not true. I've taken care of him every day, every moment. And I've taken care of everything that mattered. He interrupted, his voice growing colder with each word. The money, the house, the bills. All you do is cook and complain. My heart cracked open. I don't complain, I whispered. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. I just wanted us to be okay. Cain let out a sharp, mocking breath. We haven't been okay for years, Helena. You're just too blind to see it. Felt dizzy. The room tilted. My hands clutched the envelope so tightly, the edges cut into my skin. But, Cain, my voice weakened. The house, the savings, the emergency fund. He smirked. Gone. Gone? I repeated, my voice hollow. Yes, he said, staring straight into my eyes, savoring my unraveling. Transferred. Used. Moved. Pick whatever word you want. It's not yours. None of it ever was. My chest tightened sharply, and I had to grip the sofa to keep myself steady. I had trusted him with everything, every paycheck, every savings plan, every decision. I thought I was doing the right thing by letting him manage the finances. I thought married people were supposed to share everything. Why would you do this? I whispered. Why would you hurt me like this? Because staying with you is suffocating, he said coldly. You hold me back. You're a burden, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Something inside me shattered completely at that. My breath came out in a slow, broken gasp, and tears blurred my vision. But then, his voice dropped even lower, quiet, deadly. And just so you're ready, he said, leaning closer. My lawyer says Liam will testify in court about your instability as a mother. My entire body went numb. No, he wouldn't. He loves me, He trusts me more, Kane cut in. And he knows how emotional you are, how fragile. I've told him as much. Kids remember what they hear. I grabbed my chest, my fingers trembling wildly. You told him what? That you're overwhelmed, Kane said casually, like discussing the weather. That you cry for no reason, that you're hard to live with, and that living with me will be easier for him. I felt physically ill. The world blurred. My voice cracked in terror. You poisoned him against me. I told him the truth, he said. Or, at least, the truth that matters. My tears streamed freely now, falling onto the papers at my feet. Kane straightened and brushed off his sleeves, as if bored with my breakdown. You can stop crying. It won't help you. How can you be this cruel? I choked out. He gave me a long, emotionless look. Cruel? He echoed. No, Helena. Cruel would be letting you keep believing you're a good mother. The words hit me harder than any slap he could have given. I felt something collapse in my chest, something I wasn't sure I'd ever rebuild. Kane walked toward the stairs. Court date is in 2 weeks. Try not to embarrass yourself too much. Then he paused at the bottom step, turned his head slightly, and added with a faint, poisonous smile, Lucia says you always fall apart under pressure anyway. Hearing her name, hearing him say it so freely, sent another violent tremor through me. I knew then. Deep in my bones, I knew. He wasn't only divorcing me. He wasn't only taking Liam. He was replacing me, rewriting me, erasing me. And he wanted me broken enough not to fight back. When the door to the guest room slammed shut behind him, I found myself alone, surrounded by accusations, betrayal, and a future that suddenly looked terrifyingly empty. I didn't know how to stand. I didn't know how to breathe. I only knew one thing. If I didn't fight, I would lose everything, including my son. And Kane was counting on that. I don't remember how long I sat there after Kane shut the guest room door, but when I finally pushed myself up from the floor, my legs felt like they didn't belong to me anymore. The papers he left scattered around my feet were like accusations carved in stone. Every sentence screamed, "You are losing, you are alone, you are unworthy." For a long time, I just stared at them through blurry vision, trying to convince myself that maybe I misread something, maybe there was a mistake, maybe this wasn't real. But it was real. Too real. And the longer I stared, the more I felt something inside me sinking like a stone at the bottom of a dark river. I forced myself to move, to gather the papers with trembling hands, to breathe, even though each breath tasted like betrayal. The room spun when I stood up, but I made myself walk to the bedroom, made myself open the drawer where we kept the passbook for our joint account, the family fund we were supposed to rely on in emergencies. My fingers shook as I opened the banking app on my phone. When the balance flashed on the screen, I felt the floor vanish beneath me. 0, 0, 0. Not low, not reduced. 0. My heart slammed against my ribs. I refreshed the page once, twice, 3 times until my breath came out in sharp, panicked bursts. Still 0. I opened the transaction history, and there it was, the truth. Each withdrawal, each transfer, each movement meticulously timed over the last 6 months, always just enough to slip beneath my awareness, always just days before I'd think to check. All the money I trusted him with, gone, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. He'd been planning this long before that envelope arrived, planning my ruin, planning my helplessness, planning to leave me with nothing but the blame he scripted for me. I steadied myself against the dresser as nausea surged through me. In desperation, I stumbled over to my jewelry box, praying maybe, just maybe, something of value remained. But when I opened the lid, the truth hit me again like a punch to the chest. Empty. The necklace I wore on our wedding day, gone. The bracelet my mother left me, gone. The gold earrings I saved for special occasions, gone. Only a few worthless trinkets sat at the bottom of the box, mocking me. Cain hadn't just abandoned me. He'd looted my life like a thief who knew every corner of the house, every hiding place, every weakness. My breath shook uncontrollably. My hands clung to the edge of the table to keep from falling apart completely. Why are you doing this to me? I whispered into the empty room, my voice cracking, but the walls didn't answer. The only sound was the echo of my own breaking. Desperation clawed up my throat. I needed help, legal help, someone who would protect me, someone who could fight him. I grabbed my phone and searched for divorce lawyers in Sao Paulo, clicking on website after website with mounting dread. Consultation fees I couldn't afford. Retainers that cost more than I had earned in months. Attorney profiles boasting expertise in complex custody disputes, something Cain would use against me with glee. Every page reminded me I had nothing. No money, no assets, no accounts, no career left, no financial independence. Cain made sure of that years ago, when he insisted I quit working full-time because a good wife stays home. I didn't see it then. I didn't see how he was isolating me piece by piece. I thought he wanted to take care of us. Now, I finally understood. He wanted me trapped. He wanted me dependent. He wanted me unable to survive without him, so that walking away would be easy and cruel and complete. I blinked through tears, forcing myself to think. There had to be someone who would listen, someone who wouldn't laugh at my empty bank account. And then I remembered. My old friend Anna, who worked at a legal aid organization. With shaking hands, I dialed her number. When she answered, I didn't even realize I was crying until my own voice cracked apart in my ear. The words poured out of me in broken pieces. Cain, the envelope, the lies, the custody threat, the money he stole, the jewelry, the fear. She listened quietly. When I finally fell silent, gasping for air, she spoke with a steady sadness. Helena, meu Deus. I'm so sorry. I don't have the authority to handle cases like this, but I know someone who helps women in situations like yours. Someone good. Really good. She gave me a name, Attorney Anders. Told me he didn't have a big office or fancy staff. Told me he charged little or nothing when someone truly needed it. Told me he was honest. I clung to those words like a drowning woman clinging to driftwood. Where, where can I find him? She gave me the address. A small building near the older part of the city, second floor, peeling paint, outdated sign. He wasn't a glamorous lawyer, but I didn't need glamorous. I needed hope. I thanked her, wiped my face, and grabbed the little cash I had left in my purse. Barely enough for a taxi. Before leaving, I checked on Liam. He was in his room drawing, humming softly, innocent, safe, oblivious to the war unfolding around him. I walked over, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "Mommy will be back soon, meu amor." I wanted to stay, to hold him, to protect him from everything that was coming. But I had to fight for him, for myself, for the life Cain was trying to erase. In the taxi, the city blurred through the window. Traffic honked, people shouted, music spilled from open shop doors, but everything felt muffled, distant, unreal. I held my purse tight, my heart pounding with every turn the driver took. When we stopped in front of the building, I stepped out with legs that trembled, but kept moving. The stairwell smelled faintly of dust and old paper. I found the office door with the simple frosted glass label, Attorney Anders. I knocked. A calm voice invited me in, and at that moment, I didn't know it yet. But walking into that small, cluttered office would be the first step toward reclaiming everything Cain tried to steal from me. When I stepped into Attorney Anders's small office, it felt like entering another world. One that was quieter, older, and strangely comforting, in a way I hadn't felt in weeks. The walls were lined with crowded shelves of legal books, their spines worn from years of use, and the ceiling fan above us squeaked softly as it turned, the steady rhythm almost soothing. Anders himself looked nothing like the polished, expensive lawyers Cain surrounded himself with. He was a man in his early 50s, wearing simple glasses, a tired suit jacket, and an expression that suggested he'd seen far too many broken people walk through his door. He didn't greet me with fake politeness or rushed efficiency. Instead, he motioned gently toward the chair in front of his desk and waited until I sat down, as if giving me time to gather pieces of myself I hadn't yet realized were falling apart. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice low and steady. And I did. My entire story spilled out of me in one long, trembling stream. Cain's coldness, the envelope, the custody threat, the zero balance in our account, the missing jewelry, the staged photos, the credit card charges I hadn't made, the lies he fed our son, the name Lucia printed on the psychological report, and the fear that Cain was going to rip Liam out of my arms and leave me with nothing but the memory of being his mother. I cried, I apologized, I wiped my face with shaking hands. But Anders never interrupted me. He listened. Every detail, every tear, every fear. And when I finished, he didn't look shocked or confused. Instead, he sighed quietly and said, "Helena, your husband has prepared this very thoroughly." Hearing those words spoken aloud by someone else shattered something in me. "So, I'm going to pay?" I whispered. He shook his head firmly. "No, I didn't say that. I said it will be a battle, a difficult one, but battles can still be won. He opened a thick folder he had brought from the back room, photocopies of the lawsuit Kane filed. My stomach twisted the moment I saw my name printed under the word defendant. But Anders didn't give me time to drown in that feeling. You need to see the evidence they submitted, he told me gently. The first page was a photograph. My kitchen, dirty plates in the sink, counters cluttered. Toys were scattered around the floor. This was the week I had a fever, I whispered. I could barely stand. I was asking Kane for help. And he didn't help, Anders finished for me. Instead, he documented the state of the house to use against you. I pressed my hand against my chest, as if trying to steady the ache growing there. He flipped to another photo. My living room in disarray. Crumbs on the coffee table, blankets thrown about, a spill on the rug I didn't remember making. He waited for you to be at your weakest, Anders said softly. That's when abusers strike. The word abuser hit me like a slap. I had never called Kane that. I had never allowed myself to even think it. But hearing someone else say it, something inside me cracked open. Anders then opened the next section, credit card statements. These purchases total several thousand reais, he said, and they were made with the card under your name. I stared at the lists. Luxury handbags, expensive restaurants, jewelry stores, things I had never owned. He always took that card, I said. He said his work card was maxed out, so he used mine. He told me not to worry about the charges. My thoughts tangled, guilt and disbelief crashing together. He set me up, I whispered. Anders nodded slowly. Yes. He made it look like you're irresponsible with money. That works well in custody cases. The room spun slightly. I gripped the edges of my chair to steady myself. Then Anders reached the final section, thicker than all the others. This, he said, is the psychological evaluation submitted by Dr. Lucia Ribeiro. Hearing her name made my stomach twist. She's the woman, Kane. Yes, Anders said. I figured. He opened the report and began reading aloud. Words like emotionally volatile, unpredictable, inadequate caregiver, and psychological instability stabbed into me one after another like invisible knives. I shook my head over and over. That's not true, I said weakly. I never met her. Not once. Anders flipped to the page that claimed Lucia observed us at the park, at school, at the shopping mall. These observations were done without your knowledge, he said. Completely unethical, but difficult to disprove without strong evidence. She lied, I whispered. My voice cracked. Kane lied. They both lied. Anders leaned forward. Helena, listen to me. Your husband does not simply want a divorce. He wants to erase your role entirely. He wants custody, the house, and the assets. He wants to break you so completely that the court doesn't just take his side. They believe there was never another side to begin with. A sharp, cold pain ran through me. Why is he doing this to me? Anders's voice softened. Because he thinks you won't fight back. That sentence lit something in me. Something fierce. Something that hadn't existed in years. I will fight, I whispered. For my son. For the truth. Good, Anders said. Because we must move fast. Kane already filed his petition. We need your response immediately. He closed the folder and looked at me directly. And Helena, you must stay calm. No matter what they do in court, you cannot allow them to provoke you. Quentin will try to push you into an emotional reaction. If you break down, they win. I nodded slowly. My heartbeat steadied. My breath deepened. I understand. Do you? Anders held my gaze. This will be painful. This will be humiliating. They will lie. They will twist. They will try to make you doubt yourself. You cannot let them. For Liam, I said, I will endure anything. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something new rise inside me. Resolve. Anders saw it too. He closed his notebook and said, Then let's begin. And as I sat there in his tiny office, surrounded by stacks of legal files, the weight of everything Kane had done pressed down on me. But it no longer crushed me. It forged me. From the moment I left Anders' office that afternoon, I knew I was walking back into a house that no longer felt like mine. A house where every hallway seemed to echo with Kane's manipulation, and every room held some invisible trap he had planted long before I realized a war had begun. I opened the door and stepped inside quietly, hoping to gather my strength before I faced him again. But the moment I heard Liam's laughter coming from the living room, followed by Kane's deep, rehearsed chuckle, I felt that familiar tightness coil around my chest, like a rope being pulled. They were sitting on the couch, Kane with his arm draped across the backrest in a way that made him look like the perfect, loving father, and Liam curled beside him, holding a brand new sports bag with a giant logo I knew cost more than anything I had bought in years. Kane looked over at me, not with affection or guilt, but with the kind of triumphant calm a man wears when he believes he has already secured victory. Look what I got for him, he said casually, as if talking about buying a loaf of bread. Proper equipment, something he deserves. Liam grinned, bouncing excitedly. Mom, Dad bought me new shoes and a jersey, and he said next week he'll take me to the football academy. I forced a smile for my son, because how could I ever take away the joy on his face, even knowing Kane was weaponizing it? That's wonderful, meu amor, I said softly. But Kane wasn't done. He leaned forward with theatrical affection and ruffled Liam's hair. When you live with me, he added, loud enough for me to hear clearly, we'll do things like this all the time. You'll have everything. Liam beamed. My heart broke, and Kane looked at me with a small, poisonous smile, the kind a snake might give before sinking its fangs deeper. The rest of the evening felt like watching my life from outside my own body. When I cooked dinner, a simple chicken stew that Liam usually loved, Kane wandered into the kitchen, lifted the spoon, tasted it, and gave me a disappointed hum so exaggerated it scraped across my nerves like sandpaper. Too much salt, he declared, shaking his head. Again. Liam's spoon hovered midair, and I watched uncertainty flicker in his eyes. Kane knew exactly when to strike. After dinner, when I tried to help Liam with his homework, Kane appeared instantly, like he had been waiting just outside the door. Let me do it, he insisted, lifting the workbook out of Liam's hands. Mom's way is too complicated. She confuses you. Liam didn't argue. He just nodded faintly, glancing at me with a sad sort of apology that sliced me open. It wasn't his fault. None of this was his fault. Cain positioned himself between us with frightening precision, emotionally, psychologically, physically, stealing every moment of connection. Before I could even reach for it, I began doubting myself. I began wondering if maybe the food had been too salty, if maybe I did explain things poorly, if maybe I really wasn't enough. That was the worst part. Not Cain's cruelty, not Lucia's lies, not the staged evidence. The worst part was how easily doubt crept into me, how quietly it whispered, how deeply it dug into old wounds I thought had healed. But every time I felt myself slipping into that dark place, I reminded myself of one thing. Liam trusted me before Cain poisoned him. Liam loved me before Cain manipulated him. Liam needed me before Cain decided to erase me. I would not let my son be rewritten. Not by Cain. Not by Lucia. Not by anyone. That night, while Liam brushed his teeth, I overheard Cain's voice, low, gentle, deceptive, speaking to our son in the hallway. "Your mom is tired, son," he said, with false sympathy. "You've seen it. She cries a lot. She forgets things. It's not her fault, but she's not well." My heart stopped. Liam's voice trembled. "Will she get better?" Cain sighed dramatically. "Maybe. If she rests. If she didn't have so much responsibility." "Like taking care of me?" Liam asked in a small voice. "Exactly," Cain whispered. "If you come live with me, she'll finally have time to heal." I stepped back into the shadows, pressing a hand hard over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My son was being conditioned, trained, to believe leaving me was doing me a kindness. It was psychological violence. And Cain knew exactly what he was doing. After Liam went to sleep, I finally allowed myself to breathe. My hands were still shaking as I entered his room to check on him. He was sleeping peacefully, curled on his side with his small hand tucked under the pillow. The sight of him softened something inside me. Something fragile, but fierce. I leaned down to kiss his forehead, but as I pulled back, I noticed something odd. Under his pillow, he wasn't holding the new tablet Cain bought him. He wasn't holding any toy at all. His fingers were wrapped tightly around his old, cracked tablet, the one I always told him not to use because the screen was dangerous. I frowned. Why this one? Why hide it? I almost pulled it out, but something stopped me. Maybe he just liked it. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe I was reading too much into everything. But a quiet voice inside me whispered, "Pay attention." I kissed his cheek gently and returned to my room, my mind swirling with fear, exhaustion, and a strange flicker of intuition. In the days that followed, everything got worse. Cain's charm around Liam intensified. His coldness toward me deepened. His attempts to provoke me became sharper, smarter, more dangerous. He tried to catch me raising my voice. He tried to make me snap, to break, to scream. Anything he could use against me in court. But I refused to give him that satisfaction. I stayed silent. I stayed calm. I stayed collected. But the truth was, inside, I was crumbling. I didn't know how much longer I could survive like that, walking on eggshells, swallowing every emotion, watching Cain tighten his grip on our son, inch by inch. Until the evening, Liam didn't come home from school. Until the moment everything changed. And I had no idea that the smallest, most fragile object in our home, the old cracked tablet my son clutched while he slept, was carrying the truth that would save both our lives. The day Liam didn't come home from school felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped the air out of my lungs. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the clock on the stove, feeling the seconds punch against my ribs as each minute passed with no sign of my son. Normally, he burst through the door by 4 o'clock, breathless from running, smiling like the world belonged to him. But that day, 4 o'clock came and went. Then 4:30, then 5. I called the school. My voice trembled, but I tried to keep it steady. "This is Helena, Liam's mother. Has my son left campus?" The secretary's voice came through the line, cheerful and unaware of the panic already rising in me. "Oh, yes, Mrs. Helena. He was picked up right on time." My heart dropped. "Picked up? By who?" "By Mr. Cain," she replied casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "He said he had a surprise planned." My blood turned cold. Cain hadn't said a word to me. Not a message, not a call, nothing. Panic clawed through me so fast I nearly dropped the phone. I called Cain immediately. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. Again, again. Each time the silence on the other end grew louder, more suffocating, until it felt like it was crushing me. I began pacing the living room, my breathing shallow and uneven. Every horrible scenario my mind could imagine flashed through my head. Accidents, kidnappings, injuries. But the truth was even worse. Cain was using Liam to control me, to break me, to show me how powerless I really was. By 7 o'clock, I could barely stand still. By 8, I was crying silently, gripping the curtains just to keep from collapsing. And by 9, when I finally heard the familiar rumble of Cain's car outside, I felt so much fear, anger, and relief all at once that my knees buckled. The door opened. Liam ran inside laughing, his arms full of toys, candy, amusement park souvenirs. Too many things, too extravagant, too obviously strategic. "Mom! Mom! Dad took me to Wonderland Park. We rode the roller coaster and the bumper cars, and he got me this giant robot, and—" His words tumbled out like confetti, bright and chaotic, and I tried to smile because he was happy, so happy. But my heart was pounding so violently, I thought it might crack my ribs. Then Cain stepped through the doorway behind him, calm, slow, smirking, looking at me like he had just checkmated me in a game I didn't even want to play. "Where were you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you answer your phone? I called you dozens of times. I thought something had happened." "Relax," he said dryly, brushing past me. "I took my son out. I don't need your permission." "He's our son," I whispered, the words scraping against my throat. "And you scared me half to death." Cain snorted. "Everything scares you, Helena. That's why you're unfit. That's why this custody arrangement will be better for him. My heart stung so sharply, I had to place a hand against the wall. I opened my mouth to respond, but that was when I smelled it. The perfume. A soft floral scent drifted from Kane's shirt, a scent I recognized instantly. The same perfume Lucia had worn in the courtroom. The same perfume I had smelled the day he came home late, pretending he'd been working. Kane followed my stare. His lips curled upward into a slow, cruel smile. He leaned in, so close I could feel his breath on my cheek, and whispered, "Notice something?" My stomach twisted. You were with her." "Of course I was," he said softly, with a tone so casual it made me nauseous. "Do you really think I would stay with someone like you forever?" That sentence sliced into me more deeply than anything he'd said before. Someone like you. As if I were disposable, unlovable, replaceable. My hand gripped the counter to keep myself from collapsing. Liam didn't notice anything. He was too busy sorting through the bag of gifts, his laughter stabbing my heart with every innocent joy. "Mom, look!" he shouted happily. "Dad won this one for me!" Kane strutted into the living room with the kind of arrogant confidence only a man who believed he held all the power could carry. "See?" he called out, smiling at Liam while keeping his eyes locked on mine. "When you're with me, life is fun." I wanted to scream. I wanted to crash every toy against the wall. I wanted to tear apart every lie he had fed to our son. But I knew, deep down, painfully clearly, that if I reacted, even for a second, Kane would use it as proof. Proof I was unstable. Proof I wasn't fit to be a mother. Proof I didn't deserve Liam. So I swallowed every emotion choking me and held myself together with shaking hands. That night, when I tucked Liam into bed, he looked at me with a strange mixture of love and confusion. "Mom," he whispered, "are you sad because I had fun with Dad?" My heart shattered. "No, meu amor," I whispered, brushing his hair gently. "I'm glad you had fun." He hesitated. "Dad said you get sad a lot because you're tired." He said, "Maybe living with him later will help you feel better." The air left my lungs in one sharp, painful rush. Kane had poisoned him, quietly, subtly, strategically. And now those lies were blooming inside my child's mind. I forced myself to stay calm as I kissed his forehead. "I love you," I whispered, "more than anything." "I love you too, Mom," he murmured, already drifting to sleep. But when I turned to leave, something caught my eye. The corner of the cracked tablet sticking out from under his pillow. The old one. Not the new one. Not the expensive one Kane had given him. The old broken one I had told him to stop using. He was holding it tightly, his small fingers wrapped around it protectively, even in sleep. And suddenly, something inside me shifted. Something quiet. Something sharp. Something like a warning or a whisper of hope. Why was he hiding it? Why keep it so close? Why choose it over the new one? I didn't know yet, but I would find out. And whatever the answer was, I felt in my bones that it was important. Maybe even life-changing. Maybe even the very thing that would save us. The days after that night felt like walking through a thick fog, every sound muffled, every breath heavy, every hour stretching into something unbearable. But beneath that fog, a quiet tension grew inside me, a feeling I couldn't name yet, but that refused to disappear. It began with the cracked tablet. I couldn't stop thinking about it, about the way Liam had clutched it while he slept, about how he hid it under his pillow as if it were something precious, something secret, something that didn't belong in Kane's world of manipulation and expensive distractions. I didn't touch it that first night. I didn't dare. But the image of his small fingers gripping the broken edge haunted me through the following morning. My instincts kept whispering to me, there is something here, something important. Still, life in the house continued like a silent war. Kane moved around with new confidence, convinced he had already crushed me. He left early, came home late, ignored me completely, except when he needed to twist the knife, like when he would loudly tell someone on the phone that some women simply can't handle the responsibility, always when I was within hearing distance. Or when he muttered to Liam that Mom is fragile, or Mom needs rest, planting poisonous seeds in my child's heart. Even breakfast became a stage for his performance. He sat at the table sipping his coffee, browsing his phone, wearing the look of a man suffering a wife he no longer respected. When Liam joined us, Kane's entire demeanor shifted. His voice became warm, his smile wide, his laughter booming. He showered Liam with affection, making sure every moment painted him as the stable, loving parent. And I sat silently across from them, a ghost in my own life, because anything I said or did could become ammunition for Kane's new story about me. Unstable, emotional, unfit. I hated the silence. I hated what it made me. But I swallowed it. For my son, for the custody battle, for the fight ahead. That afternoon, after Kane left and Liam settled in his room with homework, I finally gathered the courage to check the cracked tablet. I told myself I wasn't snooping. I was trying to understand why my son was so attached to it. I sat on my bed, my fingers trembling as I unlocked it. The screen flickered several times before turning on completely. I scrolled through his photos, drawings, blurry selfies, videos of our dog, pictures of his school projects, innocent things, ordinary things. But then I saw it. A folder tucked far in the back of the gallery. A blank folder with no name, no thumbnail. My heart began to pound. I knew Liam didn't organize files like this. He barely knew how to rename things, much less hide them. With a breath I held too tightly, I opened it. 10 video files, all taken within the last month. My hands went cold. I tapped the first one. The screen was dark at first, as if the camera was hidden behind something. I heard footsteps, whispering voices. Kane's voice, low, urgent, cruel. She's easy to manipulate, he said. My stomach dropped. Just push the right buttons and she breaks. I paused the video, my breath catching painfully. My blood began to thrum in my ears. I pressed play again. Lucia's voice slithered through the speaker. Are you sure she'll react? She always does. Cain whispered, laughing softly. She's predictable. I'll provoke her right before the hearing. She'll snap in front of the judge, and that's when you deliver your evaluation. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from crying out. My pulse hammered so violently I thought I might faint. They planned it. Every insult, every attack, every manipulation, every moment they tried to make me break down. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a strategy to take my son. I tapped the second video. This time the image was clearer. The tablet was hidden behind the tall plant in the living room, and I saw everything. Cain was walking in. Lucia was behind him. Her arms go around his waist. Their mouths meet, their laughter. Their hands are touching. Their whispers. "Did you transfer everything?" Lucia asked. "Yes," Cain said. "She'll never see a centavo." My breath shook so hard I couldn't control it. "What about the house?" "After the verdict," he said smugly. "We sell it, start over, a new life." I felt like someone had stabbed me with an invisible blade. My home, my son, my life, all is being planned without me, against me. Video after video, the truth kept unraveling. They talked about me like I was already gone, like I was a foolish problem they had solved. "She trusts me," Lucia said in one recording. "She won't see it coming." "She's stupid," Cain replied. "She believes whatever I tell her." I felt my hand tighten around the tablet until my knuckles turned white. My entire body shook, not from fear this time, but from rage. Pure volcanic rage I had never felt in all 65 years of my life. But beneath that rage was something else, something vital, something electric, evidence they couldn't twist or deny, evidence that proved everything. I wiped my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. Then the door creaked. Cain stepped inside the house. I shoved the tablet under a pillow so fast my heart nearly burst. "You're home early," I said, trying not to sound breathless. "Just picking something up," he replied. His eyes narrowed at me for a moment, suspicious. "Why do you look upset?" I swallowed the truth. "I'm just tired," he smirked. "You always are." He left moments later, taking his arrogance with him. When the door closed, I pulled the tablet back out, holding it like a lifeline, because that's what it was. Liam had saved everything without knowing what he was saving. My son, my sweet, innocent boy, had captured the truth the world needed. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, maybe years, I felt power. Power is spreading through me like fire. This was my chance, my weapon, my proof. They thought I was broken. They thought I couldn't fight. They thought they had already won. But they were wrong. They had no idea what was coming next. The morning of the hearing arrived coated in a strange stillness, the kind that felt too quiet for Sao Paulo, as if the city itself was holding its breath while I walked through its streets like a woman carrying a bomb no one else could see. That cracked tablet was wrapped in a scarf inside my purse, pressing against my hip with every step. And each time I felt its weight, I remembered the laughter, the cruelty, the betrayal Cain and Lucia had spoken so freely inside my own home. thinking I would never know. I told myself over and over, not yet, not until the right moment. Anders warned me that timing was everything. When we stepped into the courthouse, the air felt colder than outside, heavy with murmurs, footsteps, the rustling of papers, sounds that made my pulse jump because I knew today wasn't the verdict yet. But it was the stage where Cain would try to destroy me publicly. He was already there, sitting straight-backed with that confidence he wore like armor, wearing a suit so pristine it looked pressed onto him. Beside him sat Quentin, flipping through his notes with an expression of smug assurance. And behind them, like a queen seated on a stolen throne, was Lucia. She looked terrifyingly perfect, her hair slicked back, her blouse crisp and elegant, her perfume probably clinging to Cain's skin that morning too. She didn't look at me like an enemy or even like a rival. She looked at me like I was insignificant, small, already defeated. I had to grip my purse tightly so I wouldn't shake. Anders leaned toward me before the session began. "Remember," he whispered, "do not react. Not to provocation. Not to lie. Not to insult. They want you to break." I nodded slowly. "I won't," I whispered. But inside, I was terrified of myself, terrified that Cain knew exactly where my breaking points were, because he had pushed them so many times before. When the judge entered and the hearing began, Quentin rose with the confidence of a man who believed the room already belonged to him. He spoke loudly, theatrically, showing the photos of the messy kitchen and living room. "Your Honor, this is the environment the child has been forced to live in under Mrs. Helena's care," he declared, using my name like a weapon, stripping me of respect. I wanted to scream that I had been sick, that Cain refused to help me, that he staged everything. But I kept my face still, my hands folded, my breathing controlled. Then he introduced the credit card charges. Bags I never bought, meals I never ate, jewelry I never touched. And he blamed it all on me. "Financial irresponsibility," he said. "Impulsive spending. A danger to the family's stability." Each lie slammed into me like a blow, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Not yet," I whispered to myself. "Not yet." And then Quentin called the witness I dreaded most. We called Dr. Lucia Ribeiro to the stand. She stood gracefully, pretending modesty, pretending professionalism. The judge looked at her like she was trustworthy, stable, and intelligent. She walked with the poise of a woman who rehearsed lies in front of a mirror. As she spoke, every word twisted reality further away from the truth. "Yes, Your Honor," she began gently. "I conducted natural observations of the mother-child dynamic. I observed distressing emotional volatility." Emotional volatility. Those words stabbed me. She described the escalator incident, inventing cruelty where there had been fear. She described the day at the park, inventing negligence where there had been love. She described me as unstable, unpredictable, and unfit. She described Liam as frightened of me. And then she said, with complete confidence, "In my professional opinion, full custody should be awarded to Mr. Cain." I felt my nails dig into the palm of my hand. Anders noticed and tapped the side of my chair lightly, his way of reminding me to breathe. Then came Anders' cross-examination. "Dr. Ribeiro," he said calmly, "did you ever introduce yourself to my client?" "No," she replied sweetly. "Natural observation requires discretion." "And did you ever formally evaluate Mrs. Helena face to face?" "Unnecessary for this method. She dodged everything. She lied with grace. She performed like she had been paid well, and she had been." I watched her hands as she answered. Smooth skin, manicured nails, no trembling. She was confident because she thought there was no evidence against her. She thought no one would ever see the truth behind her mask. And she had no idea that the tablet resting in my purse held her destruction. When it was finally my turn to testify, my legs felt like they weren't mine. I took the stand, my heart pounding against my ribs. Anders' questions were gentle, guiding, helping me explain my daily life, my love for Liam, the truth behind the photographs, the truth behind the financial manipulation. But Quentin's turn came like a storm. He approached me with the look of a predator. "So you claim you were sick during those messy days?" "Yes." "And you have no medical documentation?" "I didn't go to the hospital. So, no proof." He pounced on every word, twisting every sentence. He waved the credit card statements like holy scripture. He called me negligent, irresponsible. Then he played his final card. The photo, the one Kane took of me crying in the bedroom. "Is this not emotional instability?" Quentin asked loudly. "Is this not proof that you are volatile?" I felt heat burn up my throat. "He provoked me," I whispered. "He said horrible things." "So you admit emotional outbursts?" No." "You admit volatility?" "No." "You admit he frightened you into hysteria?" No, that's not." I broke. My voice rose despite every promise I had made to myself. Quentin smiled. Kane leaned back with satisfaction. Lucia smirked as if she had won. And I realized, in that moment of trembling humiliation, that this wasn't just a strategy. It was rehearsed. They had planned my reaction. They had orchestrated this exact moment. But I also knew something they didn't. I wasn't done. The judge ended the hearing looking frustrated, and I left the courtroom feeling as though I had failed everything and everyone, especially Liam. Outside, I leaned against the cold hallway wall, my breath shaking, tears running down my cheeks. "We're not finished," Anders said quietly beside me. "Helena, something is off with that woman. She looks at Kane like she's not just his psychologist." I wiped my eyes, whispering, "They're together." Anders's eyes widened. "Then we find proof." I looked down at my purse, the cracked tablet pressed softly against the fabric. And I knew proof was already in my hands. Proof that my son had unknowingly protected. Evidence powerful enough to burn every lie to ash. I was no longer just fighting for survival. I was preparing for war. The morning of the verdict felt like trying to breathe underwater. From the moment I opened my eyes, I knew something irreversible would happen today. Either I would lose everything, or the truth would finally break through the lies that Kane and Lucia had wrapped so tightly around my life. I dressed slowly, my hands trembling as I buttoned my simple blouse, the same one I wore to every hearing. It wasn't elegant like Lucia's expensive outfits, but it was clean, soft, and it felt like armor I had stitched with the last pieces of my dignity. Anders picked me up at 8. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. The tight line of his jaw, the way he tapped his thumb against his briefcase, the heaviness in his eyes, everything about him told me he knew how high the stakes were. And I kept thinking of Liam, imagining him sitting alone in his classroom, unaware that the people he loved were fighting for the right to raise him. When we walked into the courtroom, Kane was already there, looking freshly shaved and confident, like a man preparing to celebrate. Quentin whispered something to him, and they both smiled. Lucia sat behind them, crossing her legs elegantly, wearing a cream-colored dress that made her look like innocence itself, if you didn't know the truth. She saw me, and that faint, victorious smile appeared on her lips, as if she already knew the judge's words before he even spoke them. I looked away. I didn't trust my face not to betray the storm inside me. The judge entered. His expression was unreadable. I braced myself. We will proceed with the closing arguments before issuing the final decision. Quentin stood first. His voice boomed through the room with the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. He spoke about Kane's stability, about financial responsibility, about documented instability from the mother, and about Lucia's expert testimony. It felt like listening to my own funeral being read aloud while I was still breathing. Kane nodded along, performing concern like an actor playing a grieving husband. I stared at the wooden grain of the table, fighting back the urge to cry. I wouldn't give them that. Not today. Then Anders rose. He spoke calmly but firmly, each word landing like a stone thrown into still water. Your Honor, he said, what we have seen here is not the truth. It is a fabrication. A carefully crafted narrative meant to destroy a woman emotionally and legally. Every piece of evidence presented by Mr. Kane can be explained. Photos taken during illness, financial control that prevented independence, psychological evaluations conducted unethically and without consent. I watched Kane shift uncomfortably for the first time. And what cannot be ignored, Anders continued, is the pattern of manipulation we have observed from Mr. Kane throughout this process. But even as Anders spoke, I could see it in the judge's eyes. Doubt. Not disbelief, but doubt. Doubt wasn't enough to win custody. When Anders sat down, he put his hand near mine, not touching, but close enough to say, no matter what happens, we fought. Then the judge cleared his throat, and everything inside me froze. Having reviewed all evidence presented during this trial, his voice seemed distant, echoing strangely. I breathed in. My pulse roared. The court finds that Mr. Kane has provided substantial evidence of emotional instability. My heart stopped. No, 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 including testimony from a licensed psychologist. My throat tightened painfully. I felt the room spinning. And photographic and financial documentation. My stomach turned cold. Kane straightened with a confident smile. Lucia's lips curled with satisfaction. Therefore, the gavel lifted, and then a voice cut through the courtroom. Small, clear, familiar. Stop! My head whipped around so fast my neck nearly snapped. There, standing in the open doorway of the courtroom, still wearing his school uniform, was Liam, my son, my baby. His hair was messy from running. His backpack hung off one shoulder. His chest rose and fell quickly, like he had sprinted the entire way. "Liam?" I whispered. I didn't understand. I couldn't breathe. Kane stood up so fast, his chair screeched. "What are you doing here?" His voice cracked. I had never seen fear enter Kane's eyes before. But it was there, real, sharp. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he felt powerless. "Get out!" Kane barked. "Now!" "Silence!" the judge thundered, raising the gavel. Liam stepped forward, ignoring his father completely. "Your Honor," he said, his voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have something to say." My hands flew to my mouth. Tears filled my eyes. Kane lunged forward, panic flooding his voice. "He's a minor. He cannot testify. This is illegal." "Mr. Kane," the judge snapped, "take your seat or be removed from the courtroom." Kane froze. Liam walked to the center of the room. His little footsteps echoed louder than any argument made in that courtroom. The judge leaned forward. "Young man, do you understand that this is a legal proceeding?" Liam nodded. "Yes, sir. But my mom isn't what they said she is." My heart shattered into 1,000 trembling pieces. "And I can prove it." The entire courtroom held its breath. Slowly, Liam reached into his backpack, and when he pulled out the cracked tablet, wrapped carefully in a soft cloth, my world tilted. Kane's face drained of all color. Lucia stiffened, her hands clenching painfully around her purse. Anders inhaled sharply. Quentin whispered, "Oh my God." Liam held the tablet tightly, as if he knew its weight could crush mountains. "I recorded something," he said. "My dad and that woman." Lucia's face turned a shade of white I had never seen on a living person. The judge narrowed his eyes. "Bailiff, bring the device here." "No!" Kane shouted, desperate, lunging forward like a wild animal. "No, you can't." "Officers, restrain him!" the judge roared. 2 guards grabbed Kane, twisting his arms behind his back as he struggled violently. "It's fake! It's manipulated! She tricked him!" Kane screamed. But his voice sounded like a man drowning. Liam stepped beside me. I didn't touch him. I couldn't. I might break. But tears streamed down my face, silently. The judge signaled. The bailiff connected the tablet to the courtroom screen. The monitor lit up. The first video played. Kane's voice filled the room. "She's easy to manipulate. Just push the right buttons and she breaks." Gasps erupted. Quentin stumbled backwards. Lucia's mouth fell open in horror. The second video appeared. Kane is kissing Lucia in my living room, her laughing about me. He promised to take everything. More gasps. The world flipped. Then the final recording. The one where Kane told Lucia how he would provoke me into breaking down in court. She'll scream. She always does. And that's when your testimony will make her look insane. When the video ended, silence fell so heavy, it felt like a physical force. The judge stared at the screen, then at Kane, then at me, and finally at my son. And in that moment, I knew the truth had finally spoken. Not through me, not through Anders, not through a lawyer or a witness, but through my child, my brave, innocent, heroic son. And everything was about to change. When the last second of that final video faded into silence, it felt like the entire courtroom had stopped breathing. Even I wasn't sure whether my heart was still beating or if it had simply frozen inside my chest. All I knew was that the air had transformed, heavy, electric, dangerous. Everything Cain built, everything Lucia lied about, everything Quentin polished into false truth had just shattered like glass against the floor. And my son, my sweet, brave, precious Liam, was the one who struck the blow. The guards still held Cain pinned, his chest heaving like an animal cornered by the fire he himself had started. His wrists were locked behind his back, his face twisted into something I had never seen before. Pure fear. Not anger, not arrogance, not even hatred. Fear! Lucia looked worse. She had sunk into her seat, her face pale and wet, her perfectly drawn eyebrows trembling as she realized she was exposed, naked, in front of the law and the world. Quentin looked like someone had pulled the bones out of his body. The judge's face was red, not with confusion, but with rage. But he forced his voice calm, controlled, judicial. "Mrs. Helena," he said slowly, "please stand." My legs barely worked, but somehow I rose. My knees shook so badly I thought I might fall. But I kept my spine straight, my hand hovering near Liam's shoulder like he was the anchor keeping me upright. The judge turned to the guard, still restraining Cain. "Release him only enough for him to stand. I want him facing this court." Cain was pulled to his feet. The judge stared at him with a fire that made even me terrified. "Mr. Cain," he said, "I have presided over cases for over 25 years. I have seen deceit. I have seen manipulation. I have even seen attempts to fool the court. But never, not once, have I seen a scheme as malicious, as calculated, as vile as the one exposed today." Cain opened his mouth. "Your Honor!" "Silence!" the judge thundered, slamming his gavel so hard the room shook. "You will not speak in this courtroom unless I give you permission." Cain closed his mouth, slowly, like he was swallowing poison. The judge turned to Lucia. "Dr. Ribeiro, stand." She rose unsteadily, her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold her purse. "You submitted sworn testimony. You presented yourself as an expert. You lied. Under oath. You colluded with this man in a conspiracy to manipulate custody of a minor." Her lips parted. I can explain." "There is nothing you can explain," the judge cut in, voice sharp as a blade. "Your own voice in these recordings condemns you." Lucia collapsed back into her seat, covering her face with shaking hands. The judge turned next to Quentin. "Counselor, did you knowingly present falsified evidence?" Quentin's throat convulsed. "Your Honor, I was not aware." "You should have been," the judge snapped. "You had a professional obligation to verify the integrity of what you submitted. You failed. Spectacularly." He looked disgusted, at all of them. Then his gaze returned to me. Mrs. Helena, he said more softly, please remain standing. My breath caught. Every muscle in my body tightened. This was it. The moment my entire life had been spiraling toward. The judge took a long, steady breath before speaking. Effective immediately, this court hereby dismisses Mr. Kane's petition in full. The world tilted. Liam squeezed my hand. The judge continued, his voice firmer now, almost protective. Furthermore, full legal and physical custody of the minor, Liam, is granted to you, Mrs. Helena, without restrictions. My vision blurred instantly. My knees buckled just enough that Liam grabbed me tighter. Relief crashed through me like a wave so powerful I thought it might knock me unconscious. I whispered, Meu Deus. The judge wasn't finished. Mr. Kane, he said, turning sharply, your behavior is criminal. You are hereby held for immediate arrest on the charges of fraud, perjury, financial abuse, and attempted custodial interference. Kane lunged forward, despite the guards. No, no. She set me up. Take him, the judge ordered. The guards wrestled him down. His voice cracked in a way I had never heard before. Frantic, desperate, pathetic. Helena! Helena, please! This is a mistake! Helena! But I didn't feel mercy. There was nothing left inside me for him. Not pity, not grief, nothing. The judge pointed at Lucia next. And you, Dr. Ribeiro, are hereby detained pending the filing of formal charges for conspiracy, falsification of evidence, and unethical misconduct. Your license will be reviewed by the state board. Lucia sobbed. Actual, uncontrollable sobs. I didn't mean to. He told me. Enough, the judge said sternly. You acted knowingly. Officers. 2 officers approached her. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out, forcing them to lift her under each arm and drag her forward. Quentin tried to speak again, but the judge silenced him with a single look. Your conduct will be reported to the bar. You may leave this courtroom and await the notification of the ethics review. Quentin gathered his briefcase with shaking hands and stumbled out, a broken man. The judge took one final breath before addressing the courtroom. This session is adjourned. The gavel struck, loud, final, and then everything shattered into motion. Officers dragged Kane down the aisle, handcuffed, shouting my name like I still belonged to him. I didn't even look at him. Lucia was sobbing uncontrollably as they pulled her out a different door. The courtroom filled with whispers, gasps, shock, spectators murmuring about the scandal, the betrayal, the video, the brave little boy who saved his mother. But in the middle of the chaos, I felt nothing except the small, warm hand in mine. Liam looked up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. Mom, did I do something bad? My heart broke open, completely. I dropped to my knees in front of him, cupping his face in shaking hands. No, meu amor, I whispered, my voice cracking with every syllable. You saved me. You saved us. His arms wrapped around my neck, and I held him so tightly I could feel his heartbeat against mine. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt my lungs fill with real air. I felt my chest expand freely. I felt alive. When I finally stood, Anders was watching me with a soft, relieved smile. "You did it," he said. "No," I whispered, looking down at my son. "He did." And in that moment, in the middle of a destroyed courtroom, surrounded by broken lies and shattered schemes, I understood something I hadn't realized before. I wasn't a weak woman. I wasn't unstable. I wasn't failing. I had survived everything Cain tried to crush me with. I had raised a son brave enough to fight for the truth. And now, finally, I had won. In the days after the trial, everything around me felt strangely silent, as if the world needed time to adjust to the truth that had detonated inside that courtroom. For the first time in months, maybe in years, I woke up without the suffocating weight of dread sitting on my chest. Cain was gone. Lucia was gone. Quentin's reputation was collapsing publicly like a sandcastle under a wave. And me, the woman he tried to erase, was still standing, stronger, free. But freedom wasn't a sudden burst of joy. It came like a slow, trembling breath. The night after the verdict, I slept with the bedroom door open, something I hadn't done in years, because Cain used to complain the hallway light bothered him. That night, nothing bothered me. I lay there listening to Liam's soft breathing from his room, each inhale a reminder that he was safe, that he was mine, and that no one, not even his father, could tear us apart again. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window in a way I hadn't seen in so long. I made coffee with steady hands. I fried eggs without the tightness in my chest. I moved slower, not because I was tired, but because, for the first time, I didn't need to rush to anticipate someone else's anger. Liam shuffled into the kitchen, his hair messy from sleep, his robot toy tucked under his arm. He blinked at me, as if still unsure whether everything was real. "Mom, is Dad really gone?" The question pierced me. I knelt beside him and brushed his cheek. "He's away for now," I said gently. "But he can't take you anymore. You're safe." He hesitated, then hugged me so tightly I felt the breath leave my lungs. "Good," he whispered. "I don't want to leave you." I closed my eyes, tears warming my face. Not from pain this time, but from gratitude. That afternoon, the court officers came to deliver an official copy of the custody order and the freeze notice for our shared assets. They explained, politely but firmly, that a full investigation was underway and that every cent Cain had transferred to Lucia's account would be traced. I signed the documents with a steady hand. Hearing Cain's name on the paperwork no longer made me tremble. It made me breathe easier. But even with the protection of the law, the house felt tainted. Every wall, every tile, every piece of furniture carried the memory of his cruelty. So I made a decision. I opened my laptop and contacted a realtor. "I want to sell the house," I told her, "as soon as possible." She seemed surprised at the urgency, but she didn't question it. Within a week, the house was listed. And within 2, it was sold. Standing inside it one last time felt like standing inside the shell of a life I no longer recognized. I walked through each room while Liam followed quietly behind me. When we reached the living room, the place where Cain and Lucia had laughed about destroying me, I paused. Liam looked up at me. "Mom, are you sad?" I thought about it, really thought about it. No, I said. I'm ready. He smiled, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't walking away. I was reclaiming myself. With the money from the sale, and after the stolen funds were returned by court order, I found a modest 3-bedroom apartment in a quieter neighborhood. Smaller? Yes. Simpler? But warm, clean, new. A place with no ghosts. A place where I could breathe. I painted Liam's room sky blue with little star decals he picked out. He arranged his toys, both the old cracked tablet and the robot Kane bought him, on the new shelves. I hung family photos on the living room wall. Just the two of us. Just our smiles. One evening, Liam sat beside me on the balcony while we watched the city lights flicker beneath us. He was eating a pain de queijo I had just baked. "Mom," he said, "do you think Dad hates us?" The question hit me somewhere soft, but the wound didn't bleed anymore. "No, meu amor," I said quietly. "He doesn't hate us. He made wrong choices because he thought he could control everything. Now he has to learn that he can't." Liam nodded slowly, processing my words with more maturity than a child his age should ever need. Then he leaned his head on my shoulder. "I think we're happier now," he said. And he was right. Life wasn't perfect. He still asked about his father sometimes, still doubted himself, still woke up from the occasional nightmare. But the peace in our home was something we hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, the legal world was exploding around Kane and Lucia. I didn't follow the details obsessively, but I heard enough. Lucia's license was suspended immediately pending full revocation. Her own colleagues publicly demanded investigation. Her clinic closed within a month. Kane, awaiting formal sentencing, faced multiple charges: fraud, perjury, custodial interference, theft. His expensive lawyer abandoned the case once the evidence surfaced. And then came the day Anders knocked on my door, holding a thick envelope. "It's done," he said. "All charges finalized." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, handing me the papers, "that justice has been served." And for the first time, I allowed myself to exhale everything I'd been carrying. I invited Anders to stay for coffee. He smiled warmly, saying, "You know, Helena, you didn't just survive, you rebuilt your life." But I shook my head. No, Liam rebuilt it for me. Later that night, after dinner, I watched my son draw pictures at the table. Bright, colorful drawings filled with sun, trees, and 2 figures holding hands. "Who's that?" I asked gently. He smiled shyly. "Us." I looked at him, at that small boy who saved me with nothing but courage and an old broken tablet, and I felt something deep inside me finally settle. Peace. Real peace. We had survived the storm, and now, for the first time, I could feel the sunlight again, not through fear, not through tears, but through hope. A hope I thought I had lost forever. 3 months after the day the judge struck his gavel and freed me, life had settled into a rhythm I hadn't known in decades, a rhythm that didn't revolve around fear or silence or waiting for someone else's mood to decide the shape of my day. Our new apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and pão de queijo every morning. Sunlight pouring through the small balcony, As if blessing the home, Liam and I were rebuilding one gentle day at a time. Healing didn't come like a wave. It came in tiny moments. Like the first morning I woke up without instinctively listening for Kane's footsteps. Or the first time I laughed, really laughed, while Liam played a silly game with our neighbor's dog. Or the first evening I cooked dinner and realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. But the biggest change began with a question Liam asked one Saturday morning while helping me arrange vegetables on the counter. "Mom," he said, adjusting his glasses, "if you love cooking so much, why don't you make food for other people too?" I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean, mu amor?" He shrugged. "Like, selling it. You're really good. Better than the school cafeteria for sure." His innocent suggestion sank into me slowly, like a seed falling into soil that had long been left dry and barren. Cooking had always been my way of loving, my way of caring. It was the one thing Kane never managed to twist into something ugly. And now, for the first time, I wondered if it could also become my way to survive, truly survive, on my own terms. That same week, with trembling excitement, I began small. I cooked a batch of empanadas and pão de queijo and asked the neighbors if they wanted to try them. They ordered more the next day, and more the next. And soon, word spread through the building. There was a grandmother on the second floor who cooked better than half the restaurants in the neighborhood. I was surprised by how quickly orders came in. Anders became one of my best customers after the first bite of my feijoada. He visited often, more as a friend than a lawyer now, always bringing stories from his cases and always leaving with containers full of food. "You know," he said one afternoon while collecting his order, "if you want to grow this into a real business, I can help with the paperwork." The idea of owning something that belonged only to me, felt overwhelming, but also electrifying. And little by little, my home kitchen evolved into a tiny catering service. I bought new pans, new trays, labels, packaging. Liam helped me draw the logo, a little saucepan with a smile. We called it Helena's Kitchen. The day I received my first payment through a digital order system, I cried. Not because of the money, though we needed it, but because the feeling of independence was something I hadn't felt since I was a young woman freshly married. Back when I still had dreams before they were smothered by the reality of the man I chose. At night, after Liam slept, I sometimes stood by the balcony, thinking about that woman, my younger self. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her that she deserved better, that she was stronger than she ever believed, that one day she would become the version of herself she thought was lost forever. Life outside our home continued moving too. The news about Kane and Lucia spread through the community like wildfire. Every few weeks, someone would send me an article or a comment thread from social media. Lucia's clinic had been shut down permanently. Her license was officially revoked. She now faced a long list of criminal charges and civil suits from other clients. Kane, meanwhile, was sentenced to 8 years in prison after accepting a plea deal that took into account the recordings Liam had captured. He would not be seeing freedom anytime soon. when the official letter arrived informing me that the remaining funds stolen from our joint account had been transferred back. I placed the envelope on the dining table and stared at it for a long moment. Then I whispered, "We won, meu amor," even though no one else was in the room. One evening, while taking out the trash, I ran into a neighbor who had heard bits and pieces of my story. She looked at me and said softly, "You walk differently now." I blinked at her, unsure how to reply. She smiled, "With your head up." And she was right. I didn't shrink anymore. I didn't lower my eyes. I didn't apologize for existing. I was still healing, still learning, still piecing myself together. But I walked with my soul upright again. The turning point came during a quiet moment on a Sunday afternoon. Liam and I were sitting in the small park near our building. He was drawing shapes in the dirt while I watched the sun dip behind the trees. He looked up at me suddenly and said, "Mom, are you happy?" The question made me pause, really pause, because happiness wasn't something I had allowed myself to consider. But I looked at him, my brave son with the heart of a lion, and I felt something warm settle in my chest. "Yes," I said softly, "I think I am." Liam smiled, satisfied, and he leaned his head on my arm. "Me too." And there, in that simple moment, with the sky turning orange and the scent of rain drifting through the air, I realized something important. Happiness wasn't something I would find someday in a perfect life. Happiness was right here, in the life we were building piece by piece, with honesty and effort and love. That night, as I tucked Liam into bed, he pushed the cracked tablet toward me. "Mom," he whispered, "do you want this?" I stared at it. The little device that had saved my life, that had saved our life. "You can keep it if you want," he said. "We don't need it anymore." I picked it up gently, feeling its weight in my hands, the weight of truth, courage, and a child's instinct to do what is right. "Thank you," I whispered, kissing his forehead. When I left his room, I placed the tablet in a drawer, not to hide it, not to forget it, but to honor it. To honor the boy who held on to it because something in his little heart knew it mattered. And as I turned off the lights, I realized something that finally completed my healing. The storm was gone, but the strength it awakened in me, that would stay forever.